And now you know the rest of the story.
Well, it finally rained, right? We're back to a muddy mess. I'm gonna walk out in this outer shed here so I can get out of the rain. But I had a question regarding remodeling the dairy barn, repurposing it. Well, we've already done it once, and short answer is yes, we could repurpose the barn, repurpose it for storing these. Round bale storage is becoming a real thing here as of lately, and because of Ryan's recent purchase of another 20 or so head of cows, the amount of hay we're going to go through just got ramped up another gear, and from the way Ryan's talking, it could be shoved up another gear yet coming next year. So back when we quit milking cows, I'm not going to get into all that story, but when we were no longer milking cows, I went through and switched the barn over for raising bottle calves. The milking equipment got pulled back out of the way. The water pipes, pulled those out of the way. I went along the manger, along the stanchions, and in the manger I put wire panels up and put in chains for the collars. Well, I didn't put collars on the calves, but I had the chains long enough that I could use a chain as a collar. Really handy, by the way. But you guys might be blurry now. But, all right. We ran through a handful of calves through this barn, and successful enough. Well, there's always some bumps along the road, but I ran a full barn through, plus and then some. This barn can comfortably raise about 65 calves comfortably, and then about 10 more with a little bit of finessing. That's what I did back in, I don't even care to remember anymore, one of these past winters here, and it worked all right. The problem is, when it comes to raising bottle calves around here, as far as us, we don't plan it. There isn't much of a rotation like throughout the year. It's more of a willingness, having the funds available, and that the price of bottle calves being favorable to justify buying calves. Now, I guess I'm lying a little bit when I say it's not planned. We do plan it to a certain degree because we do not like to raise calves during planting or harvest. Mainly because on some farms in particular, I'm still getting rained on, and some farms in particular, oh, I told you it's muddy in here. All right. Some of our farms being 20 miles away from home or so, we don't really want to have to drop everything, drive home just to feed calves. When I was raising this barn of 70 calves, it took about an hour and a half in the morning. That was really just to feed them, you know, milk, mix milk, feed them, collect the bottles, clean the bottles, sanitize them, grain them, and take care of any sick calves, which after the first 2 weeks really isn't that big of an issue. The say night chores is actually what took the most time, because I would do all of that, grain them and everything, feed them milk, then I'd go through and actually have to rebed them, you know, clean off any of the wet bedding underneath them or anything, pull it into the gutter, rebed them, and that usually took right around 2 hours, maybe a little bit more, especially when you were by yourself. It'd easily take 2.5 hours at night. So I really don't like being tied down to the dairy barn. And honestly, as far as the long term here, really thinking that we're going to be raising bottle calves in 5, 10, 20 years, that's a question I really can't answer, as far as whether or not we'll be raising bottle calves or have any interest in raising calves that far away from right now, that many years down the road. Bottle calves are pretty cheap right now, from what I'm understanding. I'm hearing, I want to say right in that $50 a calf range. I haven't looked them up personally myself. That's just hearing it from local guys that are buying. But as far as raising them in this barn right now, we are about a month away from field work. A little bit more, significantly less if you're just thinking about just tillage or seeding down oats and everything, but planting in general, We're thinking right around that last week of April. At least that's when we generally will go if the weather's permitting. And the way the weather's going right now, it's raining. It's really not a really warm rain. It's only 45 degrees out, but the rain we're supposed to get later this week in the 60s and up to a half an inch. I think that's going to do something to pull the frost out of the ground. So as far as repurposing the barn, we've talked about it, where this little road goes around the silo here, actually going into the barn straight in, really right between the second and third windows, more or less, and knocking out the concrete, which there really isn't a whole lot there, just a little bit of dirt, and putting in a sliding door, and then having just enough room there you can get the skid steer and a bale into the barn. Now, you can't stack bales in on the old section of the barn. I mean, you could right in the walkway, but it really wouldn't do you much good because you only get maybe 5 or 6 bales right down the center. Where it would really help is up here in the new section, we'd be filling the gutter in with gravel or lime, whatever, and then stacking the walkway and the platform with bales. Granted, it'll only be 1 bale through the whole thing. It's not really tall enough to do 2 bales, but being able just to stack them one high up on end through this whole barn, you could probably get another 80 to 90 bales, being conservative. I mean, it can really surprise you how many bales you can get stored in some of these sheds. Like the one I'm in right now, this one's really not all that deceiving. Well, it's deceiving into thinking you can get a lot in here. We can only get about 45 in here. The far one, because it's a lot more open and you can stack them 3 high pretty well through the whole thing, that one we can get right around 90 bales, I'm pretty sure, depending on the size I make them. Alfalfa hay, I do make them 5x6 round bales, but when you get into grass, that really fluffy grass, that stuff really does, it bales better as 5x5s, and putting another roll of wrap on it, kind of like corn fodder. Corn fodder, you're supposed to put 3 wraps around it. That really fine grass hay, almost like yard grass that you get with your lawnmower, that really does a better job at knocking it down a foot as far as the height, and then wrapping it a little bit tighter. And the bale was, I don't know if I got any in here. A lot of these are all first cut grass, but I do have all the Krone bales actually made all of my second cut grass, and we're pretty well through those. So like the shed down at my place can only hold about 90, the one up above the silo. The one across the road, that can only hold about 25. If I go through and stack them on the lean-to, granted you can get probably another 20 or so. And that barn might get stacked full this year. We're probably going to be stacked fairly full this fall. At least that's the plans, because we're going to want as much hay in undercover as we can get, just so we don't have any extra spoilage. Plus, dealing with the snow and the ice, I mean, granted that's a bigger issue with the corn fodder, just because in the fall you don't take the time, well, everything's full from hay. And as far as stacking them outside, it's just, you just want to get them off the field so you can go and keep doing field work before it freezes. So it's like a panic thing. I could see the dairy barn, like long term, like in my lifetime, I could see the dairy barn going away, the silos going away, and going to more of a minimalistic approach to what we really need. Say, the machine sheds speak for themselves. I mean, you can never have enough shed space. It goes the same way with round bales. If we ever built another shed for storing hay, it would, granted, it'd be a big enough shed that it's going to store what we need it to store and then some. Same thing with like a cattle shed. We do need at least 1 or 2 sheds between 2 of the farms. And specifically down at my place, I've been thinking about it for the last couple of years. I really would like to put a shed in where that old dairy barn is, which by the way is completely beyond saving as far as repurposing that, and putting in a steer shed, just a pole shed, open faced, and using it for either bred cows or just buying steers or raising my own calves and then feeding them out that way. I'd probably put one in for about 100 head. Preferably is where I would aim. So I'd actually rather put in something 130 to 150 head capacity, just so I have room to expand, because that's one of the bigger enemies you can run into as a farmer is always shorting yourself as far as having enough room as well for storage, for anything. This machine shed here my grandpa put in, that was bigger, that was big enough to hold everything that he could potentially ever buy as far as machinery goes. And that's everything from planting to haymaking to harvesting, tillage, everything. And 3 pieces of equipment. I mean, what do we have? The 8235 hooked onto the Earthmaster, the 4640 on the chisel plow, the 76 was on the Rhino cutter, and we had to squeeze the door shut to get the Gator and the Bobcat in there, just because in the fall we really aren't taking the time to get really carried away packing them in there, because we were pulling them right back out at, what was it, 7 o'clock the next morning. So another shed would be nice, a shop would be nice, but you know, as you go, right? I hope I answered some of your questions, if any questions at all. I mean, we do have some hay left, but this shed is, well, now we're talking 5x6s. They're probably going to last a little bit longer. I mean, you get another day-ish or so compared to feeding these smaller bales. Sorry guys, but just the amount of time it takes for a cow to go through one of those compared to one of those, these just last longer. It's more material. So we're pretty well going to be fed out, I'm expecting. It's the end of March, so you figure about another month or so of feeding. The grass on the pastures and everything, like the cows down at my place, they still have access to some of the forage available. So they are actually going through and picking over the pastures rather than going right to the feed that I'm dumping out. But I don't know, we'll see. We're watching for calves every day. So thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. It's, like I say, damp and cold enough out. I'm actually, fingers getting cold. I'll talk to you guys later. So take care, take it easy, keep in touch. Bye.